Internet, let us discuss Dragon Ball Super Broly. But first, a glass of water. Oh, the magic. Look. How cool is this mug? It turns into Vegeta. Guys, I was a ride or die Dragon Ball Z kid growing up. I fell off, to be honest with you, but I was very excited to do this review because I love these characters. I have a wall of art, and Vegeta is right there. I'm a huge fan of this anime, and I used to watch Toonami all the time. I have all the Dragon Ball Z on VHS. Those very expensive VHSs from Suncoast Video that only had like 3 episodes on each. Dragon Ball Z was absolutely my jam. I am a huge fan, and I have fallen off the fandom. Now, there's so much content in the world, and when your job is so focused on one specific thing, it's hard to keep track of the other stuff. So since I am so comic book based and I'm so film focused, movies take precedent over TV, and oftentimes comic books will take precedent over anime. And Dragon Ball Z, I completed, but at the end it was hard to keep up. There was a lot of stuff going on, and then I never got to watch GT, and I haven't seen any of Super. I have seen one film, the introduction of Beerus. That was the last Dragon Ball experience I had. So Z, and then the Beerus introduction, and now Dragon Ball Super Broly. So you understand where I'm coming from with the context of this review. Giant fan, but it's been a long time. So Vegeta's my favorite character. It was great to see this character given the time of day. And also, before we fully kick it off, this video is for John Goetz, who is fantastic, who also got me to watch the first half of the first season of My Hero Academia. He is a patron over my Patreon, and he is in the tier wherein he picks things I review. So this is free for you guys to watch, but he is making it happen. So all the thanks to John Goetz. Make sure to show him some love. This was his idea. I was stoked to do it. So Dragon Ball Super Broly. It is a 1-year-old anime. This is a brand new Dragon Ball experience. It came out in January of last year, January of 2019. It came out January 16th. It had an $8.5 million budget. That is a pretty high budget. To my knowledge, I don't know a lot about budgets for anime, but the thing looked expensive. $8.5 million budget. It made $30.7 million US and Canada. So in US and Canada alone, it already made back its budget and its marketing. And then it made a total of $116.5 worldwide. This thing made money. That is $100 million-ish profit. That is absolutely incredible. It is the 11th highest grossing anime internationally ever. 11th ever internationally, which is so freaking cool, and it's the highest grossing Dragon Ball ever. Oh, now we've got Vegeta. Alright, so this particular film is the 20th Dragon Ball film of all time. It is the 3rd with direct consultation from Akira Toriyama, and it is the very first Dragon Ball film with the Super branding. So, those are all the facts. That's the nitty-gritty. Let's dive into what I thought. I wrote down notes the whole way through. My overall thoughts are that I really, really enjoyed getting back into this world. I really missed Dragon Ball. The cast is so familiar. I watched, I'm a dubbed guy. I watched the dub, and I love that cast of characters. I love those actors. I love Sabat as Vegeta. I love that whole... It's my childhood, man. Like, I grew up with these characters, so it felt like a reunion. It felt like going home. It was so nice to revisit that world, but with a twist. There were things that evolved and changed since I've watched the show, and that's part of my notes. But it never felt like I was left out. It never felt like gatekeeping. It never felt like an anime that had too much backstory for me to appreciate. And the reason I gave all the context about my love of Dragon Ball Z at the top is I'm coming from a place where I've missed a decade plus, but I was invested for a decade plus. So that's the level of viewership I'm going into this review. So if some things don't make sense to me, they might make sense to you. If some things don't make sense to you, it's maybe because I've watched some more of Z. But overall, I think it was a very, very welcoming anime. I think if you've never seen an episode of Dragon Ball, you'd get a lot of enjoyment out of this film. I think if you've followed the manga and Dragon Ball Z, GT, Super, this is going to be an absolutely incredible experience for you. I think it had a lot of really good comedy elements. I think it was a very funny film. The action is spectacular. The cinematography is another level in this film. The fights have never looked better. I've never seen a Dragon Ball fight that was that intense and visceral, but also it moved, man. Some of the jokes about Dragon Ball are like well, it's like this quarantine, we're going to be here a while. So this one just, I love the pace it kept. I love the inventive nature of their fighting style. I love that it didn't feel repetitive. I like that they're fighting balance between like the close-ups, you can tell what's going on, into the wide macro to show like the scope of their battles. I love that they kept the battles growing in size and impact, but also when you needed to like catch your breath, you got a close up and you saw the way they were actually tactically fighting. I really liked that the fight cinematography, it both spiraled around and zoomed in and out. So you had a full experience of the 3D nature of the world they built. There was a full dynamic range to the fights. And that was all great because you'd already experienced the humor and you'd already reinvested in these characters. You don't care about the fights if you're not invested in the people fighting. So I really like that they held off on the fights until about the halfway point of the film. I love that they brought together the Vegeta backstory with the Goku backstory to the Broly backstory. I love that there was a kind of a tale of three Saiyans that all were destined to meet like this. And they incorporated that with Frieza and King Cold and all those things. King Cooler? Sorry. But I really appreciate that we got like retroactively a different kind of canon. It also gave us like origins for things like the power readers, and I like that they didn't explode when they I like that they just had error messages. It felt more real. But I love that we got so many origins for so much of Dragon Ball lore in this film. It felt both like a piece of the future and a piece of the past, and you can do that with anime. You can flash back to tell different stories that incorporate different places. It was so great to see characters we haven't seen since early Dragon Ball Z. Like, some of these characters were in Season 1 Dragon Ball Z that I haven't seen since. That's, again, a family reunion flavor. And seeing young Frieza was great. Seeing baby Vegeta, little Prince of all Saiyans in that capsule. All of those were really rad. So, overall, absolutely love the film. Sorry, it's like 96 degrees and I am feeling it. So, a little bit of sweat during this very sweaty review of Dragon Ball. It was everything I needed it to be for a comeback to an anime that I love. It was everything, and that's a high bar, man, for something that I loved so much for so many years and only fell off of because of hours in the day of no reason of the actual content. That's a high bar. I had to go back and like watch some of the Boo stuff and that era when I was in college, and piecing it together like took some effort. And for that to have been that long ago and to dive back in and have this much fun with the film, it was delightful. So, my notes. We got, I love the TJE opening throwback to OG Season 1 Dragon Ball Z cast we love, but with better animation and cinematography. King Cold Frieza, retroactively tying it all together, I dig. Scouter Origins, Baby Vegeta, the Prince of all Saiyans. Great Broly setup and reminder. So, it was a great origin to this version of Broly. I know they played around with canon, and Akira Toriyama, I think that's how you pronounce his name, wanted a different origin for Broly because he didn't necessarily like the way things were handled with Broly in the last appearances of Broly. This would be his first of this canon, but his fourth total film. He had 3 other appearances, one as Bio Broly. I also love the detail work of his final blows were the scars on him. So like one time he got hit by Goku like right above the abs, and that's one of his scars, and another time his heart exploded out of his chest, and that's another scar, and I thought that was really clever, so I really dug that. Let's see. The character design is fun and crazy. I really dug that. King Vegeta would orphan Broly for spite. That seems like a completely accurate to the King Vegeta we've briefly met in the past move to do, and I really like that storyline element. The character designs reminded me of John Carter of Mars meets Miyazaki. His best friend, that giant furry dragon thing, that reminded me of what I imagined in John Carter of Mars when we're exploring that planet, but then the Miyazaki fun and whimsy, so like scary but also charming, which works for the character. As we find out later, that character is his friend, so I love that I instinctively felt that about the character. I love that Broly was already at 920 as a kid. He's almost at 1,000 power level, and he's just a kid. Bardock. I'd forgotten all about Bardock because I hadn't seen that character in so many years, so I wrote down, oh shit, Bardock, that hair. I'm a big fan of seeing Goku's dad and the instantly iconic hair on another character, reminding you of everything you need to know. And the first canon appearance of Goku's mom. That was really cool to see Goku's mom introduced in this movie. I said this is like an MCU prequel flashback from a canon film. I'd forgotten they had a somewhat Superman of an origin, and they were able to tie that in together by having all 3, like I said, of the Saiyans kind of like destined to meet. So I like the prequel flashback flavor of the first act of the film. It was a very fun Dragon Ball Z summary montage where they showed actual footage from Dragon Ball Z as they flash forwarded to the present. We started years in the past, and they kind of caught us up, and they played footage from my childhood and the childhood of the characters. Nostalgia of hearing the voice cast again. I love that Dragon Balls are just hanging out. I love that Bulma just had like 6 Dragon Balls. Like, I'll get to those later. Like, the commentary on security being whatever, and the Dragon Balls just being in a room. And I think that kind of speaks to what happens with escalation of a series, right? So when you've got sequels or trilogies or 4th films in a series, there's always escalation. Things always get bigger. So the Dragon Ball itself was the quest in Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball Z, they were more frequently used. And by the time we're at Dragon Ball Super, the stakes around the Dragon Balls are in a different category. Like, they're being used in this case for silly, superficial means. Frieza wants to be taller and Bulma wants to look younger. That's such a funny concept considering how powerful they are. And to me, that speaks to the escalation of the powers of these characters. When you've gotten a bunch of wishes, what do you keep wishing for? When you've gotten this much power, what do you use it for? For the little things. So I like the idea that power is something that you adjust to and it affects your perception of it. Kind of like, you know, rich people don't give a shit about money in the same way that people that need money give a shit about money. And I really like that that's how it's treated in this film from the very beginning. And I also really dig the end, to flash forward way to the end, people using that power correctly, and that kind of speaks to what power can be for other people not using it for something superfluous, to save a life. That's what power can be. So I love the commentary in the Dragon Balls as both the escalation of the franchise and also what power does when you've wielded it before and what it can do to help others. So I really dug that from the jump. Frieza mirroring Bulma's insecurities and wanting to look natural, I thought was really funny, and I love that cut back and forth between the two of them. A worthy and awesome Broly introduction, like him, you know, just coming in and owning in the very beginning, gives us everything we need to know about the character as an adult or a young adult. Fun plot reasoning for Frieza fighting Goku and Vegeta after last movie. I had heard they'd kind of like made amends with Frieza, but after this movie, obviously with Frieza destroying the planet, I was wondering how they were going to make that antagonism work, and I really thought the way they did it with the Saiyans and Frieza was clever. I vaguely remember Broly as a big hulking brute in older DBZ movies. Not much else about him, wondering how much is retroactive canon. In doing my research, what I mentioned a few minutes ago, found out Akira Toriyama wanted a different origin for Broly, wanted to use the character differently. Also invented a character named Kale, who was going to be kind of the surrogate for Broly. They're the only two Saiyans with greenish hair. Kale, green, which is funny to me. Broly, broccoli, also funny. But yeah, so they ended up using Broly because he wanted to fix him in his vision of who the character was. So I got my answer there. It's halfway through before Frieza arrives. It was the halfway point in the film, and I thought that was really interesting. We teased Frieza for quite a bit, and it was halfway till we got to that character. The Vegeta-Broly fight is bitchin'. It was so cool to see Vegeta used in the way I've always wanted him used. Vegeta always gets humiliated or loses and embarrasses himself. He's stronger than Goku at points, finally showing him like that. He only 2 punches landed on Vegeta. That's it, the whole Broly fight, 2. I loved seeing Goku do less well than Vegeta. I love seeing Vegeta. He's the prince of all Saiyans. Respect him. So that was really rad for me, and that whole fight was just stunning and beautiful and intense and all the things I talked about in the beginning about fighting. I don't know what this red fire form is, but that transformation was so cool. Been out of the game for a bit, don't know what red Saiyans are, but I really enjoyed the transformation, the visuals, the power set, the dynamic it shifted in the fight, everything about it, the sound design. This is one of the best Dragon Ball fights I've ever seen. Still in the Vegeta fight, one of the best I've ever seen. It was incredible. Goku warming up all silly as perfect Goku, just Goku like dancing around and adjusting. I'd forgotten how like lovely and earnest that character is, and how peaceful he is, and how much fighting is just a part of life, and it's not necessarily even antagonistic. It's just you train, you fight. It's just like me working out. It's something you do. So how do you get stronger? You fight someone stronger than you. So he's warming up because he's about to, it's his happy place. And I loved the warm-up setup with Goku. Instantly a Kamehameha made me so happy. I love that move. Hearing that warmed my heart. Music tribal nature of Broly is interesting in Goku fight. I like that he's kind of a Tarzan archetype, and they used a more tribal sound design for him, and I really liked that it built up and crescendoed as his power increased, and like the tempo escalated, and I really like the whole tribal element to basically to the character, and I like that it reflected in his musicality. Now Goku goes Fire Saiyan. Still don't know what that means. Peaceful Goku showing why he's great. I love the pacifist nature of that strong of a character. It's wonderful. There's Piccolo, I wrote. It was good to see Piccolo again. So many colors of Super Saiyan. Again, those are new to me. I have a glass out of this blue hair. Is that God mode? This is the glass. I wrote down, like, is that a thing? I've heard of the Super Saiyan God mode, and I was wondering, like, this is a super glass. Yeah, this is Dragon Ball Super. I missed some stuff. But again, didn't feel confused. I just didn't know what those colors meant other than escalation. I imagine you go from Super Saiyan to the Fire Guy to God mode. And I'm wondering, I'm guessing they retroactively got rid of 4, where they're furry again and like apes, and 2 when you're kind of bulky and you're stronger but you're slower, if memory serves. 3 is the crazy long hair and no eyebrows. But I'm wondering if it just goes from Super Saiyan blue or Fire blue. Someone tell me in the comments, and please excuse my ignorance. It's been some time. I'm just enjoying being back in the world of Dragon Ball. I love the blend of CGI and hand-drawn. I really like that they did use CGI like they did in the Beerus film, but in this one it feels like they used them more cohesively. Like, I felt like they were drawing the characters, and the CGI allowed for the cinematography and the scope. So I really liked the blend in this film. Tarzan Saiyan isn't messing around. I really like the Tarzan elements of Broly. Really dig how the green ties into his animalistic nature. Again, with the musicality and the character, I love the simple mind, the just wanting to be free of this, the guy that doesn't want to fight. I like that in the character, and I like the green. I think of nature, I think of peace, I think of all those things, and I don't know how intentional that was, but I like that the character has a unique green color signature. The cinematography when Goku and Vegeta team up is incredible. It absolutely is. I love seeing them fight side by side. I'm a huge Vegeta fan, so seeing him get his due diligence and not be embarrassed was perfect for me. And the cinematography in that scene especially, when they're flying together and then attacking together, how you can tell exactly what's going on, but there's so much going on in the frame. Also, this was the first Dragon Ball movie to go to IMAX. I can't imagine how cool this was to see in IMAX. Like, worldwide IMAX release, that cinematography, these characters, that must have been absolutely amazing. The Team Kamehameha, when they both did it at once, made me so happy. Perfect landing rumble from Vegeta made me laugh out loud. Fusion Dance Gogeta. As a guy who played the PS2 Dragon Ball Z games, Vegito and Gogeta were always characters I loved. I used to sketch these characters, man. I used to draw these guys when I was trying to draw anime, and the difference between the earring fusion and the dance fusion. Of course Vegeta wouldn't want to do the dance. Of course he'd hate that. That's exactly his character. But I love this Gogeta, and I thought the skinny Gogeta and the fat Gogeta were really funny. Of course Vegeta wouldn't want to perfect something and then have to get there because he'd rather be strong than right eventually. I love Vegeta, man. This whole thing was like the greatest hits of Dragon Ball Z. We had Trunks make a cameo, we had fusion dances, we've got Kamehamehas, we've got different uses of Super Saiyan. This thing was like, now that's what I call DBZ, in this case Dragon Ball Super, but it was like this beautiful condensed greatest hits, which I really dug. I also pondered for the first time, maybe ever, in the third act, I wonder how much Dragon Ball Z influences my UFC love. Because these are also, in real life, people that love to fight. That's what they do, on purpose. So I'm a huge UFC guy. I like mixed martial arts, and DBZ is inherently mixed martial arts. And I got into both around the same time. Like, it was the, like, Matt Hughes era UFC. So this would have been, like, UFC 7, like, or early. Because I remember I bought the VHSs of UFC when I was buying the VHSs at Suncoast Video Dragon Ball Z. So those are the two things I was saving up my allowance for and buying. So I'm wondering how much one influenced the other. So there's definitely a UFC element in Dragon Ball Z that I never put together, besides the 3-letter acronym, which I also just put together. But those two things, they're the people that love to fight for the art of it, people that love mixed martial arts. There's an art to fighting, and it's really important to those that fight for the right reasons. Goku fights for the right reasons. Vegeta's getting there. Krillin absolutely is a mixed martial artist. Yamcha, Tien, these are artists of this format. So I never put that together, or I did when I was a kid and forgot, and it came back to me during this movie. But that doesn't mean this movie is great, because this movie reminded me of a huge influence in my life, and UFC is another one. Alright, let's see. The fun Gogeta's having. I love how much fun and playful. I loved to hear the two voice actors simultaneously. I loved the just joy Gogeta had when fighting. The crazy abstract world they break into was so cool, that inverse color world, when their power just overwhelms the screen and it breaks into fractals and you experience the animation in a completely new way and style. I thought that was gorgeous. I really enjoyed that whole framing of what power can become. It also felt very like psychedelic. It was a very hallucinogenic set, and I really dug it. It was like Burning Man for a little bit there, and I really liked at what point is fighting just going to look the same? So we've already gone through so many modes of fighting. The entire third act of this film is a giant fight, so I really liked that they switched it up, and that visual really enhanced the escalation of the fight. Using the wish for good instead of superficial silliness shows not only good way to balance Broly Gogeta's strength, he wasn't technically defeated at any point. Gogeta technically was never defeated, but it also the escalation of Dragon Ball. When you have everything, you use power for silly things, that power should go to others. Kind of what I said a few minutes ago. And I also love that Gogeta won, but they didn't take out Broly. And obviously the very end when they befriend, or Goku befriends Broly, sorry, having trouble talking, that is so important and exactly the character logical escalation of character. I like that Broly can now come back. I like that he can be someone that trains against Goku. I like that Goku can get stronger because he's willing to train Broly. In my headcanon, Vegeta won't fight Broly, but Goku will, so Goku gets stronger that way because he's willing to fight someone better than him on his own, which makes him stronger because that's the point. The Capsule Corps and Goku helping out made me so happy. The idea that Senzu beans are described as, yikes, I'm gonna die! Perfect. Perfectly Goku, perfectly true of what those things do. Goku refers to himself as Kakarot for the first time, which makes me think through Broly, he's able to get a different pride for his Saiyan heritage, and I love the message of that. Through meeting an enemy that is of his world, he now appreciates who he is better. He now respects Saiyans more because he's helped a Saiyan. He's seen what Saiyans can become if they're not raised as well as he was. Goku, it's the Superman myth. Goku was raised, on the farm in Kansas, and Zod wasn't. So Broly was raised with a militaristic father, and that made him who he was, but Goku saw the good in him. So to me, that was him becoming more proud of being a Saiyan. So him saying Kakarot for the first time, one, it was great to hear the voice actor say Kakarot, because I never had heard the voice actor of Goku say the word Kakarot, and that made me really happy. But two, just from a plot standpoint, that completely changes Goku as a character, and that's a great way to end a movie. I really enjoyed it, if you couldn't tell. I also looked into some trivia, which I think was really rad. The original script ran 3+ hours. They had to cut it down to 140. This is the longest Dragon Ball film in 1 hour and 40 minutes. This is longer than some Disney films. This is a full-on feature, 1 hour and 40 minute. But the script was originally 3 hours, and they're considering a sequel, because this one did gangbusters, with some of the plot elements they cut from the 3-hour cut. So there is a potential for more using the elements they cut from the original very long 3-hour runtime. That sold out in Japan 5 months before the movie came out. 5 months. That is insane. It sold out 5 months early. Guys, I'm so glad, and it's worth it. We talked about his different body scars and how they reflect his past appearances. Released day and date worldwide to avoid spoilers, they sent out work-in-progress prints to voice actors. So instead of releasing it in one country and then having people dub over it that way, they sent out working prints so the whole world didn't get spoiled. So the whole world got to experience this all at the same time. I love that. I think that's a beautiful message of worldwide equality, as well as a great way to not find out what already happened in the movie that came out 2 months earlier over there because they're working on the voice acting here. That has inspired worldwide communication and sharing and unity while also being dope for Dragon Ball Z fans. It is the first anime ever to be released in IMAX, which is awesome, and Dragon Ball deserves that. It is the only Dragon Ball without blood, which I thought was really interesting, because I didn't notice it was missing, but I'm sure a lot of diehards did. I just didn't notice. It is Goku's mother's debut, and Vegeta was only hit twice by Broly. In my opinion, Vegeta won that fight comparatively. I think Vegeta did better in his fight than Goku did in his fight, if that makes sense. Overall, gave it a B+. Really strong film, really enjoyed it. I'm not much of an anime guy in general, but I really liked this one. And that's not a knock on anime, just like I said at the top of this, I haven't had time to invest, and it is a giant investment. These are very big commitments to canon, and I love that, man. I wouldn't want to pretend that I'm as big a DBZ fan as I once was, because it is so much invested canon, and I really appreciate the canon they built. I appreciate how accessible this was, while also being a nod to Ride or Dies. This was great. John Goetz, thank you very much for suggesting this be one of my reviews. I really had a great time. It was returning home to characters I've loved since I can remember, and it was everything I want in a Dragon Ball movie. So I am now first in line for when the sequel comes out. I feel like I'm ready to see another Dragon Ball film. I feel like this caught me up enough. I don't feel like alienated from the fandom, and this also inspired me to want to check out Dragon Ball Super. I've never seen Dragon Ball Z Kai, which I know is a different cut. I've never seen the Dragon Ball Super. I've never seen GT. Maybe, depending on how long quarantine goes, I will have the time. But down the line now, it's way more likely. Like, I'm back in, man. This brought me back into Dragon Ball Z, and that is the highest compliment I can give it. So I really, really loved Dragon Ball Super. I hope you guys dug this review. I will keep you guys posted on the journey of these reviews. John Goetz, thank you again. I'll talk to you guys very soon. Thanks.